Hi YouTube, Art here again with another audio video, and while we all wait for MWIII to drop, I figured it's a great time to get some more IEM reviews out the door and onto the channel. Shout out to Linsoul. They sent me the Kiwi Ears Quartets, which aren't going to be reviewed in this video, but are going to be reviewed in the next video, so make sure you're subscribed with notifications on so you know when I upload that one. In today's video, we are going to cover the Kiwi Ears Quartets. Now, as the name would suggest, these are a 4-driver IEM. They are comprised of 2 dynamic drivers and 2 balanced armature drivers. If you had questions about what those drivers are and how they work, I'll link my previous IEM reviews where I cover what they are and how they work down below. Now, these, like the other IEMs in the Kiwi Ears lineup, come with a nice case, a nice cable, and a whole assortment of tips that you can choose from. Now, I have my own custom cable that I've ordered on Amazon, as well as some custom tips, both of which are going to be linked below, that I use for everything, so I can compare apples to apples, and it's the most comfortable thing that I have. So I don't really mess with any of the core accessories, but they seem fine, nothing to write home about. Now, compared to the Orchestra Lites, which are still my favorite, even after trying these are a lot lighter, and they're about the same size, but they're big in a different way. I find them really comfortable, though, more comfortable than the Orchestra Lites. They're lighter, they're less intrusive in my ears, and after a while, I don't even really notice that I'm wearing them. The big difference between these and the Orchestra Lites, these are vented. So the Orchestra Lites are a totally sealed IEM. There are no holes in it to allow air to pass through because it's an entirely balanced armature IEM. They don't need air. These have 2 dynamic drivers, so they do need a little bit of air to move through the structure. So these are vented, which is going to be really good for people that are sensitive to ear pressure. You'll also notice on the back of the IEM, there's some dip switches here. This adjusts the tuning of the IEM, actually. We'll cover this more later, but this is a super cool thing to have on such an affordable set of IEMs. The tuning on these is very, very nice. They sound really finished. I think that's something about all of the IEMs in the Kiwi Ears line, is the tuning sounds very refined and finished. There's no part of the audio range that sticks out or is offensive. When I wear the Czars, yes, I can hear a lot of detail in game, but man, it's just kind of an ugly sounding IEM. If I'm listening to music, if I'm watching other streams, it just can kind of sound honky sometimes. None of these have that kind of horn quality to them. All of the Kiwi Ears feel very finished and polished in their tuning. Compared to the Orchestra Lites, these are incredibly bassy, and where the Orchestra Lites really don't check the box in terms of bass presence or the ability of bass to kind of hit the sides of your head, these do, and these do to a great extent. And the dip switches on the back even take it further. I tested these IEMs in every dip switch config, so each one is labeled 1 and 2, so I will refer to them in their configuration, and we'll start with up, so both dip switches up. This was just like very deep V, and when I say deep V, I mean lots of bass, lots of treble, and so it was cool for like a showy offy, like wow, how much sound can this tiny headset produce, but it was just overwhelming in game, and I found it to make music a little imbalanced. Didn't really like that configuration. So the second configuration of the dip switches is down on 1, up on 2. That for me was probably second place of what I liked. It kind of kept the bass in check, and it lifted up the high end a little bit. That kind of made the headset feel a little bit more high definition than it was actually, because I could hear more of the high end and that sparkle. Now, when I ultimately got this version of the dip switch config in game, gunshots and like the screech of precision airstrikes and all of that was kind of roasty, for lack of a better term, and it kind of hurt. So that was not a great experience, but music sounded great this way. So next I did up down, so switch 1 up, switch 2 down on both IEMs. This was way too bassy. So it seems like the first switch boosts that sub bass and bass, and it just became so bloated and rumbly. It's like when you get into a car with a loops speaker or subwoofer, you could hear it rattling around in the side. It was just too much. The 2 dynamic drivers, which are responsible for the bass, sound really good, especially in music, and music sounded great this way, especially like electronic stuff or jungle, but in game, it was just way too much. I would be listening for bassy footsteps when like a streak was going on, and because those dual drivers were so busy rendering the sound of a streak, I couldn't hear any of the footsteps inside. The final tuning I looked at was down, both dip switches on the IEMs down, and this was my preferred. Bass wasn't too overwhelming, the high end wasn't too shouty, and it sounded nice both in music and in game. Overall, on all of the dip switch configurations, I found the bass just to be a little bit too overwhelming in game. There was a lot of bass presence, so when explosions were going off or streaks were going off, I could feel that. I was definitely immersed. But I do feel like I was losing my ability to pick up on cues within those bass sounds. So if I'm in a building holding a corner and I know somebody's above me and the streak bass is going crazy, because those two dynamic drivers are already saturated with sound, I'm not really going to be able to hear those footsteps within it. Something that the Orchestra Lites really excel at because they are all balanced armatures. But the Orchestra Lites don't have that bass presence, so you don't get that immersion. But you do get that detail, which I think wins if you're talking about first-person shooters. All right, so let's talk about like space in the sound or imaging and soundstage. I found these a lot broader than the Truth Ear Zeros. Now, granted, they're double the price, but because you're getting this 4-driver configuration and because it's Kiwi Ears, they really did do a good job at giving these IEMs a soundstage. And that's something that I will give these and the quintets a leg up on the Kiwi Ear Orchestra Lites. If you're somebody who likes that headphone sound where the sound is kind of further away and has more space to it, I think the quartets are going to be a headphone that you like. The imaging or the ability to tell left from right felt pretty average. I didn't think it was anything to write home about. The one thing that I will note is the detail retrieval in the soundstage did get pretty crowded whenever bassy stuff was happening. So those streaks, those explosions, those gunshots. Because of the dual driver configuration, yes, it's great in music, but it did get a little busy in game. That leads me directly into talking about resolution and separation. I think the resolution and separation is pretty good on these. Now, when I listen to like very detailed music, like electronic music, like 100 gecs or Skrillex, on the quartets, I definitely get the presence and the oomph. But as soon as I put on the Orchestra Lites, I'm immediately hearing things I haven't heard before, just on a previous listen, like 5 minutes apart. So, and then in game, I have the same experience. There's a reload audio cue in Warzone right now. When you're above somebody, it sounds like somebody opening a soda can. I can't hear it on any other headset besides the Orchestra Lites. I can kind of hear it on the quintets, and we'll talk about it in the next video. But these, I think, sacrifice detail retrieval and resolution for bass presence, which could be somebody's cup of tea. I know Hector Repulse really loves bass in his headphones, so these would probably be really great for him. And at $100, they're a great sound for a great price. Do I think these sound twice as good as the Truth Ear Zeros? Yes, but just barely. I think if you're just getting into IEMs, Truth Ear Zeros are really hard to beat for 50 bucks. But I think if you're someone that is interested in edging into the audiophile stuff, you're interested in listening to music on IEMs and maybe experiencing how the tune of an IEM can change your experience of the game or music, then the Kiwi Ears Quartet is a great option for you. The dip switches give you some options. You can find curves online of how it changes those. I've kind of described them here, but you'll get an idea of what kind of audio tune you like, and it's a 4-driver IEM, which is a nice step up from the Truth Ear Zero. So I really like these. Do they dethrone the Orchestra Lites? Not a chance. The quintets were a pleasant surprise, so make sure you are subscribed so you get the notification when I upload that video. And until the next one, I'll catch y'all later. Peace.